Good evening. Oh, come on, it's a better evening than that. Good evening. It's not snowing yet, I promise you, but we'll be ready when it is. Thank you for coming. For those of you who don't know, I'm Supervisor Dave Seeley, and I really appreciate you taking time to come out. This is a very important event for us, but hopefully for you as well. It's really the second part of a long process, I think, one that began late last year and has been intensive since then. I think most of you know why we're here, but before I go on, I just want to recognize a few people. We have several members of our town board here, Deputy Supervisor Perticone, Councilman Peter Wayner, and Councilwoman Kimmy Romeo is here. Would you just give them a round of applause because they've been working hard on this? And I saw a few members of our advisory council who is a citizen group that's been really doing a lot of the heavy lifting on this and meeting and kind of synthesizing information, volunteer, just out of the goodness and the love for the community. If you're a member of that committee, can you just raise your hand and give them a round of applause? Thank you. So I'm not going to talk much because I'm going to have Ed Flynn from Labella and Carrie Ivers from my staff really kind of give a broad overview of what we've been doing the past roughly 2.5 months. I think we met in maybe late November, so it's been about 3 months actually. Time really does fly. If you recall, in September, when the new owner of the former mall, the former Medley Center, now called Skyview on the Ridge, it'll probably have a new name in 5 years. I don't care as long as it's full, right? But when he was announcing his plans, I announced the tentative acceptance of his offer to utilize about 50,000 square feet on the northern end, that northern main entrance, to develop into a community center. But when I did that, I said this would really kick off a process of engaging the public and really doing our due diligence in the town to see if we can provide an amenity we've never had. I say often, some towns have a community center, some towns have a YMCA or a JCC, some have both. In Irondequoit, we really have none. And I think that's patently unfair to our residents. I think we've had some fits and starts, but I was really committed to try, and along with my colleagues on the town board, take a good hard look at this, and I think we're further along really than we've ever been in this process. So since then, we've had some exciting announcements. We've had the commitment of, thanks to the generosity of our state legislative delegation, over $2 million to this project in legislative discretionary money. So we're very grateful to Majority Leader Joe Morelli and Senator Rich Funke for their ongoing support for the town, not just for this, but for other efforts as well. If you recall, in December, we closed out litigation with the former owner of the mall, and some people said, and I'll remind you, he sued us, so we were just responding and representing our interests and our decision. We were responding to that litigation. Some people said it was useless to fight it, but ultimately, between the district, we settled for upwards of $1.4 million. And in late December, I received not a big check now, technology, it's a wire transfer, of $450, which I immediately committed to this project, to this endeavor. So that's good. Anything we can do to offset the cost borne by the town. It's not going to be all cash, but any other dollars we can get to help with this, it makes it more feasible, right? That's what we want to see. We want to be able to provide that amenity, but we want it to be feasible. So after our introductory meeting, that was really the start of about the past 3 months of gathering information, gathering feedback from the community. What would you like to see there? What is your priorities? What needs aren't we meeting? And I'll tell you, the response is overwhelming. I think over 1,300 responses to our survey, which Ed probably was going to say. I'm probably stealing all of Ed's thunder, so I'll shut up. But I just want to say, I won't get into the details, but I have been overwhelmed by the response. I think it represents just both our commitment to civic engagement, but also just, I think, an excitement for this. And really, our intention was sincere that we wanted the people to help shape this vision. Counter to that, which you're going to hear from Carrie Ivers from our staff, we wanted to do our due diligence, though. This is a long-term commitment. And on the operations side, we wanted to make sure it was something that was feasible, something that was sustainable for the town. I'm not talking necessarily about the financing of the construction. I'm talking about everything that comes after that. We have a recreation program that's rooted largely in Pine Grove right now. This will be a little bit different than the Pine Grove Community Center. So we're starting to see how we can incorporate our existing structure, town hall, into a potentially larger facility, and also see what is the market? A market like Irondequoit, what is it hungering for? What types of activities would it support? So you're going to hear from Carrie on that end. But again, I want to thank you. A lot of people will ask me what's next, and I will say we're close to, I think, getting to a point where we can start making some major long-term decisions. Certainly that will involve me conferring with the members of the board. I look forward to the final report from our advisory council that will really give some recommendations for what the program is, what is going to be there. Not necessarily the brick and mortar, what it'll look like, but what needs are we looking to serve. And we're very much looking forward to that. I think this is a very exciting time. I tell people I used to lose sleep because I was worried about the mall, and now I lose sleep. I don't sleep because I'm excited about what the future holds. So that's a very good frame of mind, a good shift of my frame of mind at least. So again, thank you for being here. It really warms my heart to see you here, and I look forward to continuing the conversation. With that, I will kick it off to Ed Flynn from LaBella Associates. Ed.
Okay. Well, thanks, Dave. As Dave said, my name is Ed Flynn. I'm the Planning Division Director at LaBella Associates, and we were hired by the town to implement a comprehensive community engagement strategy. And we have had a lot of community engagement. As Dave has said, we had 1,300 responses, both in the public workshop and also on the online public workshop that we had. And we've had a lot of community input with focus groups as well. So you have made our job a lot easier because this community is engaged within the community and especially engaged within this project. So tonight, what I want to talk about are a few things. First of all, I need to turn on the remote control. That would help. There we go. So first of all, I want to talk about the community engagement strategy because some of you may have not been here at the first meeting, so I want to discuss that. Then talk a little bit about the survey results or the public workshop results as well. Talk about what we got from input from the focus groups. And then finally, I'm going to give it over to Carrie, and she's going to talk about some of the next steps and what Dave talked about in terms of the financial review. So the community engagement strategy, it had 3 components, and it was comprehensive. So we worked with an advisory committee that was a group of people from the community as well as town staff. We also had public meetings. Obviously, one is tonight, and we've had several other ones. We also had focus group meetings. Those were small focus group meetings where we sat one-on-one with people and had conversations with people. And we put all of that information together, and we're going to give you some of the results of that tonight. We did have, like I said, an advisory committee of about 11 individuals. About half of them were town residents. About half of them were town staff. And they were great because they gave us input on the survey and the results of the survey. They were very frank in some of the opinions that they gave to us. And they also acted as a liaison to the community. So we did the survey, obviously, online in the public workshop, but they were able to give us some input from the community, what they were hearing in the community, and that really helped us along the process. We also had focus group meetings. So at the last meeting, I don't know if anyone was there, we probably had about 120 people at that meeting. We didn't have a lot of time to talk individually to some of those folks. And so the focus groups allowed us to get more detailed information from the community, maybe get some anecdotal type information from the community. And we got a lot of good input from them. We had 4 different focus groups. We had 2 focus groups that were based on demographics. So we had older adults as one group, and we had younger adults, family members, and kids as part of another group. And so basically we talked to everyone from probably 10 all the way to 90. And we were able to talk with them for about an hour, ask them some different questions about the community center and what their preferences are for the uses. We also had 2 other groups, which we would call user groups. So we had sports groups where we invited folks from athletic directors or gym teachers to give input. And then we also had another group of community groups. So community groups that are already established in the community. We had a lot of arts folks that came to our meeting. And so we got, again, some additional quality information from the community through the focus groups. And then we had 3 forms of public meetings. So obviously one is tonight, we're going to show you the results of the survey and what the focus groups told us. But we had our initial meeting, like I said, at the end of November, just after Thanksgiving, where we had about 130 people. where we had boards up in the room of all the potential uses that could go into the community center. We asked folks, what was your first priority, what was your second priority, and what was your third priority? We knew not everyone could make it to that meeting, and we just talked to some people tonight that could not make it. And so Carrie and I worked together with Jamie from our office, and we put together an online survey which basically imitated the type of information we asked at the public meeting. And as I said, and we'll say it again, we got over 1,300 responses. I just closed the survey before I came to the meeting. People were still giving us input right before the meeting. So again, great community input, and we got, I think, good quality results because of that. So the results of the public input. This is both the public workshop and also the online public workshop that we developed. It's kind of hard to see because I think some of you folks are far away, but we had 7 or 8 different uses that we asked folks whether they wanted to include that within the community center. And the overall results are shown up on the slide there. The highest rated use that people wanted in the community center was a wellness center. And I think some of us were surprised at the result of that. But the wellness center would be basically, it would have fitness gear, it would have equipment, it would have cardio equipment, it could have treadmills, probably some weights in there as well. So that came out very, very big. The second one was a swimming pool. I don't think I need to describe what that is, but obviously was one of the uses that a lot of the folks in the community wanted. Indoor track came out third. That's something that when we sat with the focus groups, that came out again and again and again, that you need to have some kind of indoor track there because not every night in February is like tonight. And so we need some place to actually do our exercise and get our steps in. And then finally, the fourth one was a gymnasium. And we'll talk a little bit more about the gymnasium, but they want a flexible gymnasium space as well. So those were the top 4 votes that we got from the community. And just, so you know, when we did those both online and also in the public workshop, we had some dollar signs in terms of what the order of magnitude was for the different uses in comparison to the other uses, but we didn't have the actual cost on those actual sheets. So this is really what people wanted in terms of uses. We also looked at it in terms of what their first priority was, what their second priority was, and what their third priority was. And the first and second priority of most people essentially imitated what the overall results were. So again, wellness center, swimming pool, indoor track, and gymnasium. The third priority changed a little bit in terms of the numbers, but still the top 4 were those 4 uses again. I also did some additional crosstabs before I came to the meeting and comparing, age and preferences, looking at, male and female and preferences, looking at zip codes and preferences. And the top 4 were always these top 4 uses. They may have changed a little bit in terms of their order, but they were all pretty much all those top 4 uses. Some of the other uses and ideas that we got both in the survey and at the public meeting, and the first 3 are a little bit misleading, not misleading, but those are standard uses that would be in any kind of community center. I don't think we explained it well at the public workshop, and I don't think we explained it too well on the survey, but those would be standard uses within within a community center. So a meeting room, that came out big at the public workshop, and we'll talk about it with the groups as well. That came out very big. Community space, that would be a place where you could lounge, relax, maybe have some coffee, talk to your friends. A daycare, children's play area, something that's going to be standard within that community center as well. Another thing that came up big was arts activities, maybe integrating art within the facility, whether it's having paintings within the community room or within the entrance, or having events in some of those meeting rooms or community spaces. Kitchens, that's again something that would probably be standard, but making sure we also have an opportunity when you're having a meeting or having some kind of meeting at a community space that you can have a place where you can have prepared foods. And then the last one was probably important, kind of a synthesis of some of the information that we got, was to make sure that it was a true community center, that it wasn't just a fitness center, it was a community center where people of all backgrounds, all ages, could come to the community and come together and join in the community center. So the focus groups, like I said, were smaller groups. There were 4 different focus groups which we talked about, and we wanted to get some more qualitative information from them. So we asked them 4 questions. What other amenities should be part of the community center? What kind of technology needs are important, which are kind of obvious, but we wanted to make sure we added that. Accessibility issues we thought were important because everyone across Western New York is getting older, and we know that, and so we want to make sure that we address that. And then finally, what are some programming that we can include as part of the project? So as far as amenities, the coffee, the kitchen idea came up again. But one thing that came out again and again and again was to make sure that we had flexible spaces. So having meeting spaces where you could have multiple uses during the day. So an example might be, now you're having a lot of companies come and locate near the facility or at the facility. Maybe they can have a meeting there, in ties and suit jackets, and then an hour later you clean it up and you can have a pickleball contest. So that's kind of the idea, was to have flexible spaces and to make sure, and I think that reflects, they wanted to make sure the place was efficient in terms of the use of space. Storage was one thing we didn't expect to come up, and that came up very big, to make sure we have an area where people can store their sports equipment, where they can have canes, where they can maybe have places for handicap accessibility, wheelchairs. And so that came up big, and that's one thing we weren't anticipating. As far as technology, multimedia came up big, so having an opportunity for screens, projectors, some of the things we're doing tonight, so we can have meetings there instead of in this space. App compatibility, that came out big. And that is essentially if you're using some of those fitness machines, did you have some kind of compatibility between those apps that are on your phone for fitness and the actual machines that are there to compete with yourself or to compete with others. And that was important. And then, of course, the final one was Wi-Fi. It seems like an obvious thing, but we want to make sure we asked that, and people thought that was very important. As far as accessibility, of course, the building is going to have to be ADA accessible with the American with Disabilities Act. But people mentioned that make sure the parking lot and the sidewalks are also accessible, that you have ramps going from the parking lot to the sidewalk to the facility. And then finally, another accessibility issue was to make sure that we had bike racks there. You would think that people that are going to a fitness center are fit-minded, so they might use a bike to come to the facility, and so we want to make sure we had that interconnection. And then finally, programming. Obviously, having some good spaces for teaching and training. Maybe you can't rent out space here, but you could potentially rent out space there for that. In many of the focus groups, they wanted to make sure that we had multi-generational space where seniors could be in the same room as teenagers and they could mingle together and learn from each other. And then finally, having maybe some opportunities for guest speakers within the community to talk about different subjects. Okay, so that concludes my part of the presentation, and now Carrie is going to talk about the other part of the presentation.
Thank you, Ed. I appreciate that. So my name is Carrie Ivers. I'm a member of the staff at the town of Irondequoit. I'm happy to be here. So the information I'm going to share with you is just a sneak preview or a preliminary overview of some of the work that Ballard King and Associates is doing, and they are the firm that is charged with doing the financial and operational analysis. So not only understanding how much will it cost to build, but how much will it be to maintain and operate, and also what's the need? What are the uses that really meet the market demand for our current population and for our future population here in the town? And so the first thing that they look at are information about demographics. What's the population breakdown? What percentage or what number of people in our community have children? What's their population of over, in the seniors? Wanting to make sure we understand whose needs are we meeting with the community center, and so that it gets designed and programmed properly. And so here you can see a comparison of the primary service area, which is the town of Irondequoit, and then doing some comparative analysis with trends and statistics in New York State and beyond. And so you can see the number of households, we're a little bit lower in terms of the state average for percentage of households with children. And then we look at we look again with the primary service area and state of New York and national trends with respect to the median income. And so that's understanding what the financial ability of our community is when it comes to paying for services. I'm sorry, I'm holding that really close, and every time I say a P word, it really is echoing there. So I'm going to do the singer's microphone move right here. So you know, generally speaking, what we've heard so far from our consultant is that generally they like to see lower median age and a little bit higher median income. But here in Irondequoit, even though that trend's a little bit different, the message is that older populations are staying active much, much longer. And so it's really important to ensure that you're really providing programming and space for activity for a lifetime. So people are staying active longer, they want to be more engaged, they want to have access to more activities. And you know, I can tell just by the people in this room and seeing folks at the meetings, and you want to be involved, you want to be engaged, you want to have opportunity for interaction, whether you have small kids, whether you have grandkids, or whether you're somewhere in between. And so that's really what we're learning through this process. Now here we look at the distribution of age and sort of the potential and the changes in growth. And you know, right off the bat, you can see that sort of the family group and the seniors take up a big, big chunk of the population from a percentage standpoint. And so the families and the seniors are really, it's really critical to make sure that both the facility and the programming mirrors that need. So now we start to think about from using some national data, and it's from the National Sporting Goods Association, develops information with respect to participation, national trends of participation in various activities. And then Ballard King takes that data, compares it to our specific breakdown of population and some other demographics to determine sort of an idea of what we think the demand for particular recreational type of activities might be. And so then you get to see where the percentage of participation might be, and there's some high percentage for exercise walking, exercise with equipment. You see, interest in things like aerobics, potentially swimming, and so that you start to get an idea of the kinds of activities that might attract and be something that our community would be interested in having. And so it's comparing based on national trends. And so you take that information and you're sort of combining it with what we hear from the community to better understand what the current need is and potentially what the future needs are as well. And so it looks at future, population changes and how that might impact participation in those activities. And then here, which is a really interesting, again, based on national participation standards, showing you some of the more popular activities by age group. So, when you look at aerobics, the largest participation group is the 25 to 34-year-old range, followed by the 35 to 44, and the third, the 45 to 54. And it's interesting, as you get older, I remember being in the really low group. And now all of a sudden, not so much. So, but it's interesting to see the breakdown so that you can understand sort of what from a national perspective, and then also compare locally, what are the primary, interests and activities that we should be trying to meet. And so there's a lot of numbers up there, and it's a breakdown to show what kinds of activities might be more attractive to certain age groups, and how do we meet that need. And then Ballard King utilizes both national standards to the National Sporting Goods Association. They also use Esri geographic software and tools that develop this market potential index. So essentially, anything that's 100 and higher is very popular in meeting and exceeding the national standard. And so you get to see things like aerobics, bicycle riding, exercise walking, swimming, volleyball, weightlifting. Those are the types of things that, from a market standpoint, are growing and increasing as a national trend. And anything that's lower may not be. And so it shows the shifts in interests from an activity standpoint. And one of the things they're doing this this analysis with the town, and there's been a lot of information review of the data, interviews, and interaction with our recreation staff and other key department representatives in the town, and just and reviewing of the information from the community engagement. And so these are some of the preliminary market conclusions. So the market is older, but interested in recreation programs and services. The income level indicates that individuals can pay for reasonably priced programs, services, and facilities, and that reasonably priced services may translate into the need for additional subsidy for recreation. And so they're starting to understand what that there's also a number of alternative service providers in the town, specifically with aquatics and fitness. So how do you sort of consider all of those things in deciding what goes into the community center? And that's where they are right now. They're still in the analysis phase. And so as they're looking ahead, and based on what they've heard so far, this is what we've learned through their analysis, and it's still preliminary. Must-haves would be gymnasium space, meeting rooms, program space, commercial kitchen, dedicated senior space, dance and fitness rooms, again, those multi-space rooms, storage, and dedicated lease space. Some might-haves would be a tot drop, which is that sort of temporary sort of child care and service, weight and cardio training area, indoor turf or auxiliary gym, and then further analysis is needed for any type of a pool. Now, one of the things to note is that Ballard King is actually going to be making a presentation to the town board at the March 20th meeting, and so they'll be presenting, the draft results of their analysis to the town board at that point. Ed will also be at the meeting to present the final report for the public engagement, so that really the two processes are coming together, where we're hearing what the community is interested in, what their needs are. We're thinking about the community's input, but we're also then marrying that with what the financial and operational analysis is telling us for both now and in the future. And so one of the things I want, as we're looking around, I know we handed out note cards. We want to be sure to give people an opportunity to share their comments and their questions. We're going to ask folks to sort of school style, if you have a question or a comment that you want to hand in, to pass it down to the end of your aisle. We'll have folks come and collect them. We'll ask a few of the questions here. What we'll do is we'll get through as many questions as we can and address them. And then anything that either we can't get to, or we need more information, or we need our expert from Ballard and King Associates, we will be posting that information on the website.
Thanks, Carrie, and thank you, Ed, for that. Just as far as the Ballard King analysis too, one thing that they're going to help us ascertain is, as I said, once we come up with what the program is, because these two, the point of that is to determine what's our program, and by that I mean, what are we looking to provide there? What's going to fit inside that 50,000 square feet? The secondary part of their analysis is, okay, with a program like that, from an operational standpoint, how is that going to have our impact on our town's operations? Because again, this is a long-term commitment. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. And again, we want to do it in a way that's economically feasible and affordable. So the marrying of these two, both the study and the community engagement, we're going to work with the advisory council and the town staff who's here tonight and been participating to kind of determine what that program is based on everything we've done so far. And after that, understand how can that fit in to the operation of town government. So this is a commitment we're making. We want to make sure we're evaluating this from a long-term basis. So that's where we're headed. But this is the update, kind of where we're at right now based on everything we've done thus far. So I just wanted to clarify that. The Ballard King study has been very valuable, and I will say, they work with communities throughout the United States. So one might argue that, okay, they're the kind of the big box consultant, but really what their strength is, I think, is they provide very honest feedback to you. I think they let you know the hard truth of what reality is. They use conservative estimates, right? So they're not going to paint that rosy picture just to help the town board realize a reality that might not be there, or a cost estimate that might not be there. So I think that's very valuable. And for folks who have expressed concerns from a taxpayer standpoint about the long-term commitment, that's the value, I think, of this economic assessment that we're doing. So with that, I stole the mic from Carrie. I'll give it back, and I'm going to go away.
You're allowed to steal a mic anytime you want. That's how this works. So I'm going to try to do my best, and I'm going to apologize for, actually, it's going to be easier if I maybe turn this one on.
Dueling mics, we're going to do what? Yeah, no. Just spice these up and do like karaoke afterwards, right?
Yeah. Except you do not want me doing karaoke at all. That is not, no one came here for that.
By the way, while Carrie's getting ready, kudos to Bishop Carney for letting us, I don't know if anyone from the school's here, but I will say they're terrific partners in anything we do in Town Hall, and thank you. Give them a round of applause, because, last 1,300 survey responses, we thought we needed a bigger auditorium, so it's a little less intimate than at the library, but then again, it necessitates the need for meeting space and flexible meeting space where we could remove a barrier and be more flexible. So thank you, Bishop Carney.
So I've got one question here. It says, will there be a membership fee? And so that's one of the things that the analysis is really looking at, is how would that be structured? What, we're envisioning that there probably would be, but what would that include? What amenities would require a membership? What aspects of the community center would be open, for folks to go into? And I think you look around and look at other community centers or other spaces that sort of feel like that, and there are places where you can, access that you don't have to necessarily be a member, but many areas that you might. And so that's something that's being looked at.
I use Webster as a good example. I think they charge $25 a month, and they don't offer anything beyond what we're looking for. The benefit of that is, especially for some of our senior residents, whether it's MVP, Silver Sneakers, or Excelis, I can't think of the program, that qualifies for, most cases it qualifies for eligibility there. So there are financing mechanisms. But what we've seen is, by and large, most of these community centers, there is some membership fee derived from that. And again, the point of the market assessment is to understand, if there is a cost recovery model, what we could expect on the cost recovery side while keeping it affordable.
So we've got the question of, and these are going to be sort of not in any particular order, so that's the glory of this. So the question is, what are the components of a wellness center? How is it different from a fitness center? And so I think that becomes a question of terminology or lingo. They might be the same thing depending on who you ask. But generally, when we talk about a fitness center, we mean a place that has some kind of combination of exercise equipment. Typically, it's cardio machines. It's the elliptical, the treadmill, and maybe it's weights, whether that's free weights or whether those are the weight machines, the universal machines, what they call the pin-in machine or the pin machines that you put the pin in. And then, and so that those terms get interused, and you might get a different definition. But generally speaking, that we think of them as interchangeable. Different from a gymnasium, which is another question. So gymnasium is one of those where it's a sort of the big open gym that can be used for multiple sporting activities, whether that's, setting out the toddler, play stuff temporarily, whether that's, their pickleball, whether that's a basketball game, whether it's volleyball. Often they're designed so they can have a curtain down the middle and be divided. Yeah, go ahead.
So I have three questions. How would the community center be staffed? I think the goal is to have this be staffed by town government. I think part of the recommendation will be, what additional staffing might be needed. And again, that helps necessitate some sort of cost recovery, hopefully. why is the pool being isolated as the only amenity that's needed further explanation? It's two things. It's the physical layout of the mall, and if it can fit in there, and also we need to take a good hard look at whether or not a pool, which is probably the most expensive investment for a facility like this, not only to build, but to operate as well. And I think that's a decision that's going to be a very hard decision for, I think, both the advisory committee and the town board to make. Obviously, it's hard not having it just be one of the easy hanging fruits, because it does score highly. And that's going to be probably one of the harder decisions that we make. But we do wrestle not only with the capital costs, but with the cost of operating the pool. As I think Ed or someone said, you can't turn it off at night. You know, you can't flick the switch. It never really stops. It's a considerable investment. And last, how would services programming overlap with existing services like Pine Grove, the Senior Center, Library, Community Education? The easiest answer is they would complement. They would take what we do and provide more space, build upon that. Katrina, where are you here? Katrina Hall is back there. She runs our recreation program with Don Sinton and a host of other folks who are here. One of the biggest limitations is space, so take what we can do and how can we do it, more of it, continue to do what we do well, build on our strengths, and offer more with our existing programmings. We're not looking to erase any of our existing programmings, but only build off of them. Carrie.
And I'm going to say one thing, too, about the question answer. So if we don't get to a question, if you've submitted one and we don't get to it here in this meeting, we are going to post the questions and an answer collectively from whatever, whether it's Ed's group that needs to help us answer it, or it's Ballard King that needs to help us answer it, or it's staff. We will post the questions and the answers that were presented at tonight's meeting. So I don't want anybody to feel gypped if they've asked a question on a card and we don't get to it tonight. So that's the first thing. Are we adding services that will put current places out of business? So that is a great question. One of the earliest things that we heard from our consultant, Darren Barr from Ballard and King, was that often the services or programs that are offered through a recreation program are introductory in nature, typically. So, for example, you might offer a yoga class. However, when somebody might try the yoga class through the community center. However, if they really decide that they love yoga, they probably are going to graduate beyond the community center and then maybe join the yoga studio in town, where they might not have ventured to do the yoga studio in town because it seemed intimidating. So there are a lot of examples like that where the service is almost, again, because it's a community center and it's meeting many, many needs, it's going to be sort of skimming the surface on some of those activities, where if you really want to take a deep dive and really get into that activity, you would have to go elsewhere.
Thank you. What is the estimate for time to complete the center, and when would construction start? Well, if you ask, and one good thing about Angelo is he's been a very good partner in this, and he's calling me almost every week saying, where are we in the process? So he's going to be going soon. Look, putting the pieces together, I think we've gotten a good amount of this out of the way. I would like to get started. If we determine we can really move forward, which I still want to do this, I think the board collectively still wants to do this, we can move forward likely as to complement the construction at the mall, which is going to, the former mall, Skyview, which is going to be taking place this year. In a lot of regards, it doesn't make sense to, not do it while he's building out the other components as well. So as quick as possible would be my as soon as we get this overall assessment done and figuring out the financing. We don't have a lot of real large barriers preventing us from really kind of moving forward. Obviously, we have to talk about the financing, but hopefully we can be flexible in the financing as well, that would afford us the opportunity to move forward in a quick manner. Not too quick. I've become more responsible as I've done this job. I used to just want to spend money right away, but now I take my time and a little bit more deliberative over it.
The question is, do you have to be an Irondequoit resident to be a participant? And I think that the short answer to that is that current programming here in the town, if you want to participate, there's a resident fee, and then there's a higher non-resident fee. And I know Katrina will jump up and down if I'm wrong about that, or somebody in the audience. I'm wrong. Okay. Well, one of the things that in other towns, they often have that when they have a facility that might attract participation, that it would be a non-resident would be a higher fee to participate. See, that I'm glad. This is why we had them sit. So other towns have that resident, non-resident fee
Our
structure.
recreation staff right there is biting their nails profusely, just worried we're not going to say the wrong information. But, one thing though is if we do move more towards a membership structure, which we haven't really ever had a membership structure. Ours is more, I don't say a la carte, but it's more based on our programs, et cetera. So, that would be a shift for us that would afford us the opportunity to look at what some other towns are doing. But certainly, my preference would be this to be affordable for residents, but also there would be some benefit to being a resident. I would say that's you're funding it, so I think it's only fair that there is a benefit towards Irondequoit residents being able to utilize it on a membership basis.
Have you seen the multi-use rooms at the Parrington Rec Center? They are wonderful and reasonable to rent. Yes, we have. Actually, as part of this exercise, there have been multiple tours to other locations, other facilities in Monroe County area, and the Parrington Rec Center was one of those. And the multi-use spaces certainly are something that our community center, that's one of the primary things that we'd be looking at is trying to figure out designing spaces so they can be used for multiple activities. Rooms with carpet, rooms without carpet. You learn a lot of lessons, and the benefit of doing a community center after other towns is you get to learn from things that they would do differently. Mm-hmm. And so that's been a really great experience, is touring those other facilities, hearing from their staff, our staff hearing from their staff what they love about their place and spaces and what they don't love about their place and spaces. And that's one of the ways, we heard it from the community, but seeing the storage at those facilities where you're like, wow, that's important to remember, and it doesn't always get remembered when you're thinking about a new building, is where are you going to put the stuff?
Thanks. I have two that I'm going to read off this. Why can't we utilize our current high schools better, more availability in hours? It's an ongoing evolution, I think, with the school districts. What we're seeing is, I think they're having their own utilization of their own organizations has increased. We certainly do use both districts, probably not as much as we'd like to. We do continue to work on intermunicipal agreements with our school districts, but it is their own programs take first priority, and it's an ongoing conversation. I'll say that we work very well with our school districts. Do we wish we could use that pool whenever we wanted to? No, and there's obvious reasons for that, but certainly we look to take advantage of it when we can. And is this a break-even center, or does the town hope to make money from the activities of the center? These things, it's very hard to end up in the black with these things. I know Parrington, if they didn't have the landfill, it would be very hard to operate that thing. You look to break even, I think, as much as possible. We're going to look for ways to generate revenue, whether that's through some public-private partnerships, whether that's through utilizing kind of that synergy with the whole mall proper. One thing, I was sitting with Mr. Ingrassi yesterday, and his ears kind of perked up when I mentioned this kind of notion of a kitchen in the meeting space, because he does a lot of, one of the industries he's in is the hotel industry, and obviously he said, hotels don't make money solely off renting rooms anymore. It's off those events, those special events, and he said, you look at kind of what you have as an option, and, your options are limited if you don't want to go for the Hyatt downtown. You go from really the Hyatt downtown to the Legion Hall. There's no intermediate option. So, I think we're going to look for ways to use the space to generate revenue. I think it's been done in other places, and we can do it before. And look, we're conscious of our operating budget. We can't just go and increase our operating budget by this exorbitant amount to do this. We have the property tax cap, and I think we pay enough in taxes already. So the need, and I see head shaking right now. Woke some people up, right? So, look, I'm mindful of it as well, and we want to be, if not in the black, as close to there as possible.
This is a question. There's a little intro here before, though. My sense is that elders are more engaged in keeping body and mind healthy and engaging in intergenerational time. How will what we develop foster elder participation and intergenerational opportunities? I think that's a great question. I think this community center will provide unparalleled and really not really available to the town before now, an opportunity to develop those opportunities for intergenerational activities. So when you've got, a group that's gathering to do some activity that's a senior group, and then it's also at the same time as, a preschool, activity or whether it's arts or an educational program or something along those lines, or a physical activity, they'll be in the same building at the same time. There might be some intergenerational programming that the staff can develop that hasn't been an option before now because of the lack of space or available amenity to do so.
This is a statement and a question. It says a pool would be great, but ongoing maintenance is very expensive. Many would like it, but it is practical. Is it practical with schools and LA Fitness pools available? Again, that's a decision we're going to have to make. I am mindful there is a pool. I am a member of LA Fitness. I see the pool. I see it used. We do have pools at our school. But this card kind of outlines the kind of forces we're wrestling with on that one.
I apologize. I'm trying to read. People have a lovely script. I'm just trying, and the pencil is a little bit challenging, so I do apologize. Will the seniors be able to use their insurance for activities to pay for programs in their entirety, silver sneakers, et cetera? And so that's a good question. I think
I'm not going to answer that in absolutes. I just know at the other community centers, there are opportunities for that. I can't answer if it's a full cost share, but I know insurance companies want their beneficiaries to be active, to be well. So it's a perk for them. It's a plus for them. The more healthier we're living to do it. So they're certainly looking to help subsidize that.
And I want folks to know that some people just made comments and didn't ask a question. So when you see me reading and putting it down, I'm just putting down a comment that isn't a question. So I hope that's okay with folks. And what we're doing with those comments is we're going to be taking them in, providing them both to Ed and also to our advisory committee so that it can be incorporated into the final report that Labella provides that summarizes the community input that was received through the process. We need a walking track. Is that still a priority?
So this is where it gets kind of cool, right? Because if you think walking track, you think around a gymnasium, right? So who here, when the mall kind of had started to decline, used to in those winter months walk around the corridor, and who was a mall walker? And who was pretty upset when you lost that opportunity, right? So, whether walking track, I think absolutely yes. Now, whether that's a track around the gym or we can just use that space, which Angelo has said, it's if you're in that community center, there's no reason why you wouldn't be able to use that space. That's an option we're going to have. But I think people, by and large, walking, that's definitely a service that people have been clear that they'd like to see. And we have opportunities that are exciting.
So this is a question related, and I'm going to try to summarize. So is there any chance that there would be room made available for the use by the community concert band for practice, for use, or for other arts council members? And so I think that the short answer is we're going to try to build in as much space as we can to address the arts community and meet as much need as we possibly can, so that community spaces can be used by multiple groups for practices, for performance, for interaction. And so that's something that we're certainly looking at.
I was talking to someone I used to be on. Believe it or not, I sing. I used to be on the Rochester Oratorio Society, and I ran into one of the other tenors in the group, and he said, are you looking at doing just that? Because the Rochester Oratorio Society, probably one of the premier choral groups in the region, they rehearse in a church basement, which is very nice, but it couldn't be more stuffier and just not your ideal place for beautiful music to be made. So I think we're looking to provide that flexibility. Are we going to be able to build a performing arts center? I'm not certain of that. I don't think so. Would I love to have flexible space for people to practice and perform? Absolutely.
I was waiting for us to get to it, but here it is. How does this affect our taxes? So the question is, and
I don't have the answer to that. And again, I think I've already said, we have limits to what we're able to do with taxes. The property tax cap is really, and it's a good thing. I think it's prevented the town board one year deciding we want to raise our taxes by a certain amount. That's why we're looking to, that's why, we took the step to do that operations study to really know what we're committed to. And we're going to get the honest truth. So if that requires us to scale back or to maybe not make investments we'd like, but aren't going to mesh with kind of our operating structure, that's a conversation that we have not tasked with the advisory council. But that's going to be the decision I think the town board makes, and that's the decision I think we're elected to do, is to do right by the taxpayers while balancing our desire to really provide the amenity. So I hope I answered that as honestly as possible.
There are a couple of questions here about the specific number of people that answered to certain things on the survey, and we don't have that information right in front of us right now. But as part of that final report that is being prepared that summarizes community input, there will be more of the data or the results of those surveys, so that will be available to the public. So we can't answer that question right this minute, but it will be answered.
Can I just add though? And Ed might shake his head in disagreement. You look at a sample size of, and this is not a scientific survey, right? We weren't doing random sampling, and it doesn't have an exact demographic breakdown of the town with age, gender. But you get a large enough sample size by some of these cohorts, particularly age cohorts, that really, you don't want to say they're completely representative, but you can really, we call them crosstabs, right? Within those however many results, and you got your top lines, which is what everyone wants. Then you can break it down how that, is within certain age cohorts. And, again, it's not a scientific survey. That would have been a substantial investment, but I think we got some pretty representative feedback of what, people in the town want based on those age cohorts and those demographics. Ed agrees.
So
the client's always right.
There's a question about what's the square footage of Pine Grove, and the thought, so we can compare the two sizes. I think roughly 13,000.
Who wants to shout it out from the back? 13? 13,000. Good job, Carrie.
Yeah, I pay attention when Katrina talks.
I use an example. I might have said this when we had our kickoff meeting, but the group that wanted to do, it was one of the school districts wanted to do a yoga class, and I said, how many people? And they named it, and I couldn't provide them anything at Pine Grove. The library was booked, so we had them in the meeting room at Town Hall. So if that wasn't a microcosm for the need for more space, I don't know what is.
How are the focus groups formed? How is it decided whom to ask to attend? So the advisory committee was a good source of information and names. We also looked to staff and to other folks to identify folks in the categories that we were looking for. And I can tell you that the challenge for the focus group is supposed to be small, 5 to 10 folks in the room. So always the issue with putting the call out to the world, and I can tell you, in our senior study that we did a couple of years ago, there was a question at the end of that survey that said, would you like to be involved in a future committee? We had 400 people provide, and I'm not kidding you, 400 people provided their name and number and contact information so they could be on the committee. So the challenge was, oh goodness, if we put out we have to sort of make sure it's a group, and so we made sure that it was representative of, so for the sports group, we picked all the sports folks from the schools, from the individual, and we invited folks, and whoever could come could come. And so we use that same thing in the different categories. And we used our neighborhood association and some of the existing structures or frameworks to identify participants who would be a representative from the various groups.
One criteria was I was not allowed to staff the focus groups. I didn't want to pack it with my mother and her friends and my brother, and so we wanted it to be not a blind, but we wanted it to be evolve outside of town hall and my own office, etc. My mother's very opinionated, though. Her first instinct was, well, can we put a craft brewery in the community center? So you saw the news today. Thankfully, we finally have one coming at I Square, so she's happy. She'll vote for me again.
The question is, why did the town not reserve part of the mall and or land for the community center before selling it for such a low price, and I think we didn't sell it. So I'll let.
Yeah, so I said in the beginning we have ownership on the issue. We never owned the mall. It never was in our hands. It was obtained from the previous owner through an auction based on a lien that the previous owner had. So sometimes it's a misconception. We never technically owned the mall, nor would I think I want to. I think 50,000 square feet is enough. That's the answer to the question.
There's another question here. Why not move Parks and Recreation out of the current senior community center to have more space at the current Pine Grove?
Yeah, understood. And look, one thing we have to determine is what we do with Pine Grove, right? That's ours. How much do we bring over? Do we bring the senior program over there? Do we gradually phase it in? That's going to be an asset we're going to have, and ideally, a lot of what you see at Pine Grove will move to that new center.
What if the mall goes bust? What happens to our investment?
Well, our investment wouldn't be impacted, right? We have the space to develop as we want, and certainly whatever arrangement we have, there'll be guarantees whether we're owner outright or a tenant. Normally, those transfer if there's a new owner. I could look in the eye and say the mall will be full in 3 years. I hope that's the case. I'm confident with the plan that Mr. Ingrassi has unveiled. I know there's businesses interested, tenants interested, because for whatever reason they call me before they call him. It goes back to that notion that we own the mall, but it's an opportunity for us. So I also think this, and not that we're there just to help the redevelopment, but I think this does help kind of serve as a spark, and for us to play a role in that. It's not something we're required to do, but I think it's mutually beneficial. But I don't want that mall to fail. If that mall fails, then I failed, and we're doing everything we can to help cultivate an environment where the remaining 950,000 square feet are redeveloped. And I'll tell you, I wish people could walk into that call center at the Macy's, and they're high security for some reason, but you walk in there, you would have no idea you're in a Macy's. So what that tells me is, everyone that said, why isn't it just retail, et cetera, you can redevelop it. It doesn't have to be a mall. It can be a whole host of things, and it's just partially using your imagination and partially being flexible. So I'm confident that we're going to see success over there.
All right, and you just answered the second question that was on here, so I'm going to go to the next one, which is, what is the projected total cost of the project with and without a pool? And I think the short answer, we don't have that information yet. That's one of the things that we're looking at as part of the analysis, the financial analysis. So that's not yet fully known. That's right. Is it? Yeah.
Yes.
And then there's
it will be known.
Yeah.
Once we make it, we're going to be completely transparent and upfront about that.
Right. What does the owner of the mall get out of this? Lower taxes? Question mark.
So he no. One thing, and obviously this is spelled out, but when he made the offer, so first of all, he's losing 50,000 square feet that he could rent out now. It helps him get a tenant there. One thing he said though is, I don't want to make money off of you being there. If I'm your landlord, I'll sell it to you for free. If we have to work out some sort of lease buy option, I don't want to make a cent off of it. And he's sincere in that. He wants this to be something for the town. He's a smart businessman, I think. He knows that a community center brings people there. It's certainly something that helps, give a sense of excitement to the facility. So there might be some intrinsic secondary benefit, but directly from the town, really, he's been upfront about that. He doesn't expect to gain anything financially from this. If anything, probably lose something, hopefully to gain something with the rest of the project.
There's a question here about how information about the meetings was being disseminated. I can tell you that this public meeting and the first one, it was a wide range of things. The comment was they only knew about it because of the news. Well, that's one of the ways that we get the word out is by doing the press release so that it's widely distributed. We also had it on Facebook, on our website. We communicated through our various boards. We also communicated through the neighborhood associations to hope that they would spread the word. Really tried to talk about it any time we could. So that's something that we're always trying to work on and find better and new ways to reach everybody. But with a town of 50,000 people plus, we can't do postcards to everyone. That's a,
Yeah.
it's a challenge, but we try to be as out there and talk about it early and often. So
And I'll just say this, a lot of people last meeting came up and said, there aren't enough younger people here, and I agree. And so we try. That's why we do the focus groups. That's why we do the online surveys. I think we want all people to have the opportunity, and I think it's easier to make an evening meeting more for other people. So we've tried to diversify how we've gotten people here. But just to Carrie's point, we do make a concerted effort, and we also publicize it on ICAT and some of the more traditional ways. But we'd always like to see more. I think this is a good turnout, but certainly, we don't shy away from drawing attention to these meetings.
So the question is, why isn't the idea of an auditorium being included in our choices? What I'll say to that is the auditorium has been raised during the public meeting and during some subsequent conversations and communication received by the town, so that information is being received. The survey choices were based on sort of the most popular common uses that we typically see across community centers, and that was sort of the baseline. But there is always that other, and please tell us what we missed. And so that's one of the things that'll be looked at and evaluated as we're looking ahead to what spaces can be provided in a community center. So it's not that it's not a choice, it just wasn't listed outright. So now it's been thrown into the mix, and it'll be looked at as we look at the feasibility and the operational analysis. And then there's a question, why would you provide exercise equipment already provided by 2 nearby businesses?
I think it's a whole host of things there, right? You want to have the diversity of amenities there, a one-stop shop. You want something also to draw people there. Some people might not want to go to LA Fitness or Planet Fitness. Does that mean you need, who goes to LA Fitness? They have a massive, or Planet Fitness. They have a huge fitness facilities. Does that mean we need something on par with that? No, not necessarily. But you want to just have a diversity of amenities that you provide there.
Now the question is security. How much might be provided?
I know the security is a priority of the owner of the mall, and it's a priority for us as well. And lighting is always important, so it's a priority, and it's something that will certainly be looked at. And we want people to feel welcome and safe there. It's a big, expansive place. It's a big parking lot, so that's certainly something we'll take into consideration.
And I'm trying to make sure I missed. Okay, this is another question about the completion date, which I think you already addressed. Okay. And then there's some comments here. I'm not sure if I think we may have gotten to most or all of the questions. And like I said, we're going to go through and we're going to sort of summarize comments we're going to share with the committee, and that'll be part of the report. And if I'm going through, and I apologize. This seemed like a really great idea. Now I'm trying to make sure I got everything.
Carrie does a great job at this. The last meeting we had, I forget what was the top. Oh, when we had our Irondequoit Bay Outlet Bridge meeting, she was like Geraldo Rivera walking around with or Phil Donahue, she said, walking around with the microphone. So you're not moving around as much tonight. I'm sure you're much happier.
No, I'm really out of my element. I like being up and down the aisles and handing the microphone to folks. There are a couple of comments or questions about the kitchen and whether or not it would be, how would it be available to everybody or just for senior programming. I think that's one of the things that we're looking at. And so I think the thing to take away from this meeting and conversations going forward, this is really the beginning of the beginning of the process. This is understanding needs and then marrying that with what's feasible, what's reasonable. I've been using the analogy of, we're going to go buy a car. We're excited. We know we're going to go buy a car. And then now we're going to get to the dealership and decide, yeah, maybe not the leather seats. Okay, or we're not getting the Lexus. So I think that's, sort of we've heard all the things that people want, and now we're going to try to marry that with what is feasible for the town now and long term.
Yeah, agreed. And again, my office is always open. I enjoy seeing you there. I enjoy seeing people at Town Hall. I just want to again thank our advisory council, Rick Walther, who I see over there as our chair, Elena Alderman, Jamie Pittanero, Jessica Mitras, who I saw, Paul Kakamies, who I see. They're doing this on their volunteer time. Councilman Wayner has been involved as well. And thankfully, in Peter's private career, he's an architect who, among other things, designs community recreation centers. So you should consider very fortunate that he's been a part of that. And then members from our staff as well, certainly Carrie. Give Carrie a round of applause, by the way. She, Katrina Hall, Don Sinton, Lauren Kelly, Bob Kiley, who's our highway commissioner, and the rest of our staff over there. Thank you for coming. And this is an ongoing conversation. So with that, thank you for coming. It's good to see you, and be careful out there this weekend. It's going to be a little rough.